to the first podcast for BA Mitra and BA Buddy. We have our first guest here, Kathleen Schweber. She has been in the industry for about 12 plus years, more than 12 years, and she has been in the IT industry in the capacity of a BA since last 8 years. She is a CBAP. Welcome to the podcast, Kathleen.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
And talking about your experience, Kathleen, you started with the Department of, was it King's Court?
Yes, King County District Court. So for those who, have different, I guess, legal systems, and the audience is big. So the court I worked for was what we called the Court of Limited Jurisdiction. So it was small criminal matters, like petty theft and driving under the influence, and then civil suits between individuals with a cap of $100,000 is the claim. So small matters, but we had a very large volume. We were the largest volume in our state here in the States.
I think that's kind of a good thing, because if the volume of the other offenses would have been higher, that would have been a bigger problem. So, Kathleen, I saw that you moved from one profile into, and you were there for about 4 years, and then you moved to being a business analyst for the next 7 years. So how did the transition happen? Did you learn something during your course, or did you always wanted to be a business analyst and then you charted your course accordingly?
That is a great question. I have described myself as an accidental business analyst. I started my work at the court as a clerk. So I was doing clerical work behind the scenes. I was supporting a courtroom, really customer facing. And I liked the criminal justice field. So that's how I got into that space. Several years into working there, my company went down the path to get a modern case management system. We were on a mainframe that was at the time about 30 years old. We still had a blue screen, and it was not mouse friendly. And we were trying to get into a space where we could have digital documents and have better reporting and have online tools for our customers to create more access to a system that was very difficult to navigate. And it started with kind of an opportunity where the project team asked for ideas. What are your pain points? What do you want to see differently? And I dove right into it and ended up taking a position, what they called a functional analyst on that project. And so I was bringing my subject matter knowledge of the business to help transform it. And from there, things really just took off. And I found, what I really love, what I think I'm really good at. And so it was totally by accident. It was supposed to be a 1 or 2 year gig that turned into 7. And I didn't know until, moving across the country that business analysis was a real job. I mean, I lived in this bubble where I was, and I had always planned to have my career there. So I didn't have to look at the job market. And then when we moved, it was, can I do this somewhere else? So it's been exciting, but definitely accidental. Did not plan to be here. Didn't plan to move. So it's just been fun. It's just kind of taking it as it comes.
And in terms of facing the customers and the day-to-day activities, did that help in any way to come up with these ideas? Did you think from the customer's perspective, or I would say client? What do you call it?
Customer, client. Those are both good terms. I think the first lens that I brought was that of a clerk, of the role I was doing, and I was brought in to fill a hole in subject matter. The big volume of the work that our court did was criminal and traffic. So think you don't stop at a stop sign, or you don't have your seatbelt on. Those were the big volume of things. The work I really liked was the civil. It's the, I'm suing you for this. And so there was not a lot of expertise in that department. And so that, I think, helped set me off for success right away, is that I brought knowledge about a niche, and then they needed that knowledge. It was actually the biggest revenue stream for them, was that. So it was also important financially to get that component right. And so I think I had an advantage in that I really loved that work. It was not the glamorous work, and that I think is why it wasn't a fan favorite. But so I guess if there are folks who are looking to transition, or folks listening who want to get in, I think the lesson learned for me is find what sets you apart. What are you interested in? What knowledge do you have where others don't? And then find a way to sell it.
Right. That's a very good advice, Kathleen. Now, I've also, before we, move on to the next question, I wanted to congratulate you on your new venture
Oh, thank
in
you.
the LLC. I did see that on LinkedIn, and it was really nice to see. Where I'm coming from is, how did your skills as a BA? Did you have, your transferable skills? Did they help you, venture into a new business altogether? And how did you come up with it? And how are things going in terms of balancing these two roles? Because BA sometimes has some limitations. However, as a consultant, you have to think differently, and you have to think differently and proceed accordingly.
Yeah, thank you. So that's a company that I opened with my husband recently. He's a project manager by trade, and so our professional interests overlap quite a bit, and we find that we have good partnership because our roles are similar and they're often partnered in the business world. But we opened that kind of as we didn't expect it. It was accidental again. My husband has a woman who he used to work with who was starting her own business, and she asked us for some professional help with setting up. She wanted some help with logistics, setting up communication plans, and a customer focused communication strategy because she had worked with him and she knew what he could offer. And so we opened that so we could kind of legitimize our income stream for that effort. Right now it's a very side thing. We both are, employed elsewhere full time. But I absolutely think that the business analysis work set that up for success. It is different though when, I have a tendency to over deliver. I'll commit to more than I probably should. And my husband is the same way. We're pleasers, we're people of service. And so that is our Achilles heel is doing too much. So the interesting thing for us on that engagement was really setting clear boundaries and defining our scope and sticking to it. It's like we committed to 10 hours for this deliverable, and we constantly reminded each other, hey, we need to stick to the 10 hours, maybe 11, but we're not going 15 because we're not going to get paid for that. So that was a mentality shift of boundary setting, when we're not going to get paid for anything else we're doing. So I'm not sure how far we'll take this, but it has been fun to start something together.
So I wanted to get this takeaway from the discussion that often PAs are a breed who are misunderstood a lot. I mean, people, especially in the last, let's say, decade, people have been starting to learn more about business analysis and what the role entails and how they can utilize these services across the board. It's not just IT that this profession is limited to. It can go beyond IT, and there have been so many examples where BAs have helped not only bringing in efficiency but also saving a lot of money in that process. In the process, so I wanted to highlight this, that the skills that you earn from BA can also be applied to other things that you come across. It could be your day-to-day or even something that you are thinking of. So thank you for that, Kathleen. I refer to my cheat sheet because when you try to be organized. So I'll refer to my cheat sheet. The next point that I want to discuss with you, sorry about that.
Okay.
How does business analysis in public sector differ from analysis in private sector? Are there any specific skills or negotiating tactic that you have to use in a private sector, in a public sector, as compared to what you would have done in the private sector?
So I will caveat by saying I've only ever done business analysis in the public sector. I did it both for the court and now I'm a full-time contractor for the Nashville Electric Service. So they are seen as a government not-for-profit providing electricity to a region. So the knowledge I have of the private sector is really just what I think there are assumptions that I make from what I see in my network and then also from conversations with folks in my network. I think the biggest challenge I find is budget. And I think that the constraint of budget in the public sector is significant. Nobody wants to pay more for services, right? There's a certain threshold where you just can't tax anybody anymore. Or, if you're at certain government agencies are restricted from having a profit. So you have to manage your revenue stream very carefully and then manage your expenses. And I think that there is trouble with that because everything has an overhead, and business analysis is not often seen as a revenue center. They're seen as a cost center, right? It's labor and benefits, and the outputs often are not something tangible. You can't hang them on a shelf. You can't pass them across a table necessarily. So it becomes kind of a negotiation point to have those resources and then properly staff them. I find in my experience that when you have good BAs who are delivering good BA work, there's a demand for it. And then it's a matter of, you can't meet all the needs. So you've demonstrated there's value and you continue to deliver it, but there's not then extra support. So that I think cost is the biggest challenge. And then I think the other challenge is regulation, is the bureaucratic structure that comes with government. You can have a regulation change that says you must take this action right now. But then to get through the process to execute it is very tedious. There are a lot of hoops to jump through, a lot of boxes to check. And so that makes it hard to make progress. You have this sense of urgency to get to the outcome, but the process to get there is very tedious.
I agree with you. My experience has been similar. And at the same time, when it comes to budget, what I feel is in the private sector, there's always a room for some, let's say, a percentage margin that is kept when they budget for such project. But for the public sector, when it comes to the cap, that's it. There's no negotiation room. So oftentimes, at least for a couple of projects that I've delivered, it has been a half-baked product that we have delivered, even if it wasn't agile timelines. At the same time, it was half-baked. It did not reach the KPIs that it should have met, because of which it's kind of a downer for the people working with us, because nobody looks at the background. They just look at the end product, and the result is, we hired a couple of BAs, it didn't work, and I don't think we'll go that way again. Yeah. So it's sometimes that's a downer.
That is a downer because you haven't had the opportunity to show the value. There's a constraint, and that is always disappointing. I think as a practitioner, it's one disappointing when we can't deliver the value we want to deliver, because we tend to be service-oriented people who really want to get that good outcome for our customer or our client. But then also that there's maybe a sully on the name of the practice, right? It's, we've done BAs before and it didn't work. And, so there's some, it's just not fair, and I wish the opportunities were a little bit different. I think too, it's similar to the budget, but because of that constraint, I don't find that there's room for a lot of innovation or creativity in the public sector. They're managing so tightly to, their budget, their allocations, that, there's no fun money. There's no like, oh, well, let's try to improve this product. Let's just have some creative opportunity. And because it's undefined and the value is not clear, it's hard to invest in that. Whereas I think the private sector, they have that freedom to say, yeah, we have this margin for innovation. We're going to just invest in it. And if it's a flop, that's okay, but we have great potential and let's see what we can get out of that.
For sure. So, private sector would always try to turn the 15% increase into, let's say, 20. Mm-hmm. But in public sector, if you achieve 10%, that's good enough. So the good enough attitude comes into play here for the public sector, and that's where the work stops. Now, coming to misconceptions. Now, I've come across a lot of misconceptions around BA and the work that BAs do. Can you, tell us some of the common misconceptions or misunderstandings that you've experienced in your career?
Yeah, there were a few that come to mind. I think the first one is that BAs are just for requirements, and that not every project needs requirements. We know what we're doing. We know what we need. It's fine. We don't need a BA on this. Whereas I think, requirements are historically what we are known for, what we are really, really good at. They set the stage for everything: acceptance criteria, testing, documentation. Let's think strategically down the road. We're going to do, this component now, but what does that look like later? What can we change this into? And I think that's the other misconception, is that BAs are tactical, that they're only good for the short term, for the right now, solving today's problem. Whereas I think there's so much value in the strategy. Let's solve tomorrow's problem today and see what we can do better, faster.
And many times BAs even think on the lines, let's not let the problem happen at all. tomorrow. So that, and one of the misconceptions that I've gone through is we need a BA to document things, which
A note
is
taker.
yeah. So which is I think which is very unfair. The next one, the next pointer that I have, Kathleen, for you is can you pinpoint any specific initiatives or improvements that your team has brought in and which was really important for the project in terms of delivering value and at the same time ensuring that these projects are stick to a timeline, uh, public sector timeline, that is.
Yeah, that's so let me think about that for just a second. It's hard to pinpoint one. I think a component of a project that was really, I think, beneficial is when I was with the court and we were working on that case management project. A big component of it was electronic filing, and prior to that project, all of our filings were on paper, and the filing fees were paid by a check, and so it was a lot of paper touching for several people in the process. And then it slowed our ability to provide records to the public because we were handling so much paper. And so one of our big goals for that effort was to get to electronic filing and public electronic records. And that took a lot of out of the box thinking. We were trying to reduce the scope of the project by going out of the box. We went with a COTS product and they had an electronic filing component, and we were trying really hard not to over customize it. And you know how that goes. We did customize quite a bit. But the scope, the timeline was really important. And so that involved meeting with stakeholders, not just in our business, but also our public filers. And so we started some user groups. I did workshops with them to get feedback on other court systems they had used, what their pain points were with other e-filing systems. Understanding their capacity as practitioners to engage with us. What equipment do you have? How many people do you have to support this? What would your cost model look like if we asked you to go this route, if we mandated it? And so then we also had to anticipate changes to court rules. Like there was not a rule that even allowed for electronic signatures. So it's easy to, sure, you send me a scanned copy, but the court rule required it to be a wet signature. So then we had to kind of anticipate all these different facets. And so that we had some bumps. We had to shift a little bit in production. But I think overall the outcome was really good. I think the process change internally was the hardest with the staff and the judges because the clerks didn't have as much paper to touch. And so their work was greatly decreased. But the judges then had a lot of new work with having to index and read through these digital documents. Their routine was tactile. They knew how many pages in this attorney's signature page was, and now they're scrolling, and so it was different. And continue to iterate with feedback. It's been a few years since I've been there, but last I heard it, it's still what they're doing. So I think the change management, I think, is always the biggest piece. But yeah.
And did you face any challenges convincing the group of stakeholders?
Yes, I think there were kind of two challenges. One was on the public side, the filing requirements that we imposed upon them. We required a certain organization and format so that our internal users had a repeatable and consistent product. For our QA process, we had to have some governance around what an acceptable filing was. And that really required the practitioners to change. They all were kind of doing their own thing, and historically we let them do that, but we had to tighten up the organization of our filings. The other change was with the judges, and their process changed significantly in that it did take them more time. We could quantify the additional time it took them to do their work because of this change. And that presented some interesting challenges because they're elected officials. They don't have a boss like I did. So when my boss needed something done, he told me what to do and I did it. Their boss was the population of the people in the county. And so it required influence, of trying to help them understand the why, what the impact was, what the cost would be to do something else. And so that did present a lot of, churn. There was a lot of time spent on the human side of that, trying to influence them with like, I didn't have any power to make them do it. No one did. It was, they had the incentive they had to cooperate was so that they, had good relationships, but they didn't have to comply. So that was a big challenge.
I think that this is where the negotiation skills of a BA, of a role like BA come in picture.
I think our real power as professionals is in the relationships. And that's what I look for when I'm hiring for my team is more the soft skills. I think I can pretty well train somebody to diagram and do notes and do the technical piece of our job. But it's really that, how do you connect with people, and do you have empathy, and do you have patience, and can you also be firm and get to an outcome? So that I think is really where we shine as that mediator between the customer and the technical team.
For sure. Looking ahead, in the future, with AI developing so rapidly, and I think it's touching every facet of our life. See things changing as a BA in terms of, do you think it will help? Do you think it will take some jobs away from a BA perspective?
I don't know if it will take jobs away, but I think it will free up time to do the really meaningful work. I can give an example. So in my role now, I've shifted somewhat to I'm doing less business analysis day to day, and I'm leading a team. And I have found myself reaching for AI to help consolidate information and help me with my research. Because the projects that I do work on now, I don't have as much time for because of the other management responsibilities. And so it's, I may give a prompt to, for instance, we were looking for a requirements management software. And so I put in kind of some high level requirements, some products I'd like it to integrate with, and, give me some options. And in a few seconds, I had 10 options, and I iterated my prompts to get down to 3, and then could then go spend my hour looking at those 3 products instead of my hour looking at 10, or just, Google and see what I come up with. So I think it will make us more efficient. The other area where I really struggle personally is on the non-functional requirements. That very technical piece, and it's the things you don't even think about. It's the usability and the experience that I have a really hard time putting words around. I know that there are lots of tools specifically for non-functional requirements gathering, and that I think, especially in a space where everything we do is tech-centered, that, that really is an important characteristic now is the non-functionals. And so any tool I can use personally to help me be better at that, I'm going to use. It just makes me faster, and then I have time to do the other things that I also have to get done.
What suggestions or advice would you have to upcoming BAs who are trying to get into the field, or who have been just starting to feel that they are getting into the field, or who have just started their career after graduating? And what suggestions would you have? What are the things that you would do differently, looking at, when you started?
I don't know what I would do differently, because I think I'm a believer that everything happens for a reason, and divine intervention is big in my space. I think there's a plan. However, I can relate from, being on the job market a couple of years ago. During COVID, we were moving, and I had always thought I would be where I was at the court forever. And so I was never prepared to be on the job market. I would just spend time, reading. I think one thing that helped me a lot was reading job descriptions and trying to put some tangible to the vague. So if in a job description, they're looking for certain characteristics, I had to read each one very carefully and then evaluate an example of how I demonstrated that. And that was a confidence booster. I may not on paper have done a lot of, say, requirements gathering. Maybe if you're new, requirements gathering, what is that? But I can sit and have a conversation and learn about how someone does their job. And I have this example from this one time. So it's translating, which is a BA skill, right? I'm going to take the abstract and I'm going to put something concrete around it. I would also leverage, the community. So whether that's LinkedIn, whether it's IIBA, or the BCS in the UK, I know there's a lot of really great populations that have people and resources. Much of it is free. And so if that is a direction you're really wanting to go in, do that. I didn't have my certification until I was 8 years in the job. I didn't even know there was a BA certification until all of a sudden I was on the job market. And so I don't think that formal training or a certification is a requirement. It might help accelerate you. It will put some foundation, but I think so much of BA work is, whether you're built for it or not. You can learn the technical piece, but the soft skills I think are really important. Are you a good communicator? Are you patient? Do you like to listen? Are you nosy? Can you ask probing questions and get through walls? People often aren't good at sharing. So can you break down those barriers? I think finding a way to translate your experience and your passion into these traits that employers are looking for, you can do that. I've had people sell me on the work, and they've been a great fit for the role without a lot of experience. So everything translates.
I agree with you. You said earlier, in terms of if you're new, you think you might have not done something, but if you look at the definition of who a BA is, it's anyone who does the function. Whether he or she may be called, the role they may be in, or if they're doing the things that a BA does, they are a BA. Now, before we close, Kathleen, I have a couple of things that I've discussed. I've prepared, and I hope you like it too.
Okay.
So we'll start with two truths and a lie.
Okay.
So the first scenario is, I once had to use singing to explain a complex process flow to a group of stakeholders. B, I worked on a public sector project that had more stakeholders than a Shakespearean play, and I've successfully implemented an IT system across multiple departments, improving efficiency significantly. So which one is a lie with these three?
Oh gosh, I feel like they could all be true. I
can bring the options up.
I'm gonna go with I think the third one is a lie.
Is it? Okay.
I feel like the first two were too great to not be true.
All right, the next one talks about I've navigated a public sector project with a budget that seemed to shrink faster than a cheap cotton shirt and hot wash. I once had a project meeting that was so long, I considered bringing a sleeping bag to the office. And the third one is, I've led a project that resulted in reducing paperwork in a government office.
I'll go with the sleeping bag, number 2.
It's about, I once had to explain a technical glitch using only farm animal metaphors during a project presentation. I've managed a public sector project that had more changes than a chameleon in a bag of Skittles. And the third one is, I've been a part of a project that digitized, let's say, a 20-year-old manual process, saving hundreds of man hours.
Farm animals.
The next one is the last one. I've worked on a project where the scope expanded faster than one's waistline during the holiday season. I once had a stakeholder who communicated solely through poems during a project. And third one is, I've implemented a data management system that improved data accuracy by 10 to 20% in a public sector project.
What was the first one again on that one?
I worked on a project where the scope expanded faster than one's waistline during the holiday season.
I feel like they all could be so true.
Maybe
you're telling stories about my life. I'll go with A.
All right. Thank you for that, Kathleen. And the last segment of our discussion, which I feel has been really great. So thank you for that. Would you rather? So would you rather work on a project that requires extensive collaboration with multiple stakeholders, or a project that involves working closely with a single stakeholder with availability next to impossible?
Oh, the first one. Lots of people.
The next one, would you rather handle a project with large scope and a high level of ambiguity, where requirements may change frequently, or a project with a relatively narrow scope but strict regulatory compliance requirements?
Oh. I'm a glutton for punishment, so I'm going for the first one.
Next one?
Yeah.
The next one talks about, would you rather work on a project that involves implementing new technologies and digital solutions, or a project that focuses on process improvement and streamlining existing systems? So digitization or process improvement?
Process improvement.
And the last one talks about, would you rather be responsible for managing a public sector project that has high level of public scrutiny and media attention, or a project that operates in a more low profile environment, but requires navigating complex bureaucratic processes? So
visible or
Something which has a lot of media attention and public scrutiny, or something which is complex, too complex. Really.
I think the complex. I don't like being out on stage. So
Thank you so much, Kathleen. Once
yeah,
again.
thank you. This was really great.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you for that. Great advice. Great, and it was so good to learn about more about your experience and how you like to navigate through public sector projects, which is the topic for today. So I hope you guys will enjoy it. And once again, take care, Kathleen. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been great to learn from you as well.
Likewise. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.